I find a lot of my awe in relationships where maybe I'll have a big get together, or maybe there will be like a surprise birthday party for somebody. And in those moments where I step back into the corner of the room and I look around and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And I can't get that on a phone in a group chat. You're listening to Mentor Moments, where we talk about all things counseling, technology, education, and career development. I am Braden Wooters, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Michael Keener. Grab a seat, and let's get started. Okay. Welcome back to another episode of Mentor Moments. I am Braden Wooters. Is that what we're doing today, Mentor Moment? Dr. Keener, where is your microphone? Because when you get like super amped, it gets all.
Did I move it a little closer? Or?
I don't even think I don't think it's even your mic. I think that's picking up audio from like your computer now at this point. I don't know. I don't even know if it works anymore.
I guess you're right. It's probably not that one. That one just looks cool.
Oh my gosh. How are you? How are things?
Life's good. What about you?
Good. Yeah, I'm good. Today was my very last day working at Youth in Need. Super weird. I still had sessions today and everything. Yeah, super strange. It dropped off my computer, very anticlimactic. Really. I was with Youth in Need since the very beginning, really, since an intern. Yeah, I started off as an intern and I kind of worked my way up to supervisor, and now I'm on to different things. So today was my last day. Super. This was also the first ever job that I've left like by choice. I don't know how to best explain that, but like other previous places that I've worked, I've had to leave because I've either had to move for something, or I've had to start practicum, or I started school, but it was something I could blame other than this is the first time that I've left and pursued a position by my own choice. Super exciting. It felt like kind of a developmental milestone, I guess, for me. So anyway, that's my spiel.
I'm glad you finished that way with saying a developmental milestone, because as you were saying that, I envision you as a bird jumping out of the nest to go into the next bigger nest, right? Kind of that type of
Yeah, yeah, and I'm trying to figure out what bird I am. Probably some sort of, it's probably a vulture, some ugly. Uh, and so in our notes, I had written one question for our opening beat, our welcome and our hook, and the only question is, ever been to a hoo-ha? And it sounds like Dr. Keener has never been to a hoo-ha before.
not to that brand, but I have been to one Korean barbecue before, and it was a unique experience. But tell me, what made you put that as our hook here?
Because I love hoo-ha, and it's a little bit different. I mean, because I've been to Korean barbecue, kind of like what you're describing, but this is like, it's like a chain, first of all, and you go and you fill up your bowl with whatever you want, and then you go to the front, and then there's just a giant like hibachi grill that one person is cooking everyone's meals at the same time. One hibachi grill for an entire restaurant. And I've always wanted to see if you show up like on your birthday, will they let you behind the grill? Will they let you? I want to wear a hat. I want to like whip stuff up. Um, or the other like joke that I kept making was like they'll cook whatever you put in front of them, and so I kept thinking like, what if I brought outside food, like something absolutely random? Like, would they actually cook it if I just like gave them a bowl of like, I don't know. Like if I brought, it sounds like I like if I brought like a Jack's frozen pizza with me, like would they do that? Like on, I don't know. I clearly my brain is kind of all over the place, but we went to, the reason why I asked was because we went to Hoo Ha for like my like last ever team meeting with my team and my not coworkers, my employees, I believe. And so it was just a nice little bow, and I was like, gosh, I love Hoo Ha. I don't know if Dr. Kinger's ever been to Hoo Ha.
There was a couple of times in my life when we would go to certain restaurants, and either one was like a little diner, and you could see them cooking on the flat top, and another one was sort of family friends restaurant, and we would often just sit. And I was enthralled about making eggs on the black stone, because it's scrambled, omelet scrambled eggs. But I think you should get a black stone, and then or get your own wok. I guess what the heck.
Yeah, I would have to do that and, like, make sure I don't burn down my place. Anyway, uh, any other updates on your end?
So you talked about a favorite. Can I talk about it?
Yes, I'm
I
ready.
shout out, right?
Ready.
So everybody knows I'm from Buffalo, New York, right? And there's a restaurant in New York called Ted's. So if you make it up north and make it up to Buffalo, it's Buffalo only. It's a charbroiled hot dogs, hamburgers, chicken breasts, sausages. But Buffalo is sort of famous for a brand of hot dogs called Salen's hot dogs. Pretty good. So if you want a good char broiled hot dog, nothing boiled, nothing fried, get it on the charcoal. You can buy your own Ted's charcoal. And what makes Ted even better, thin rings. Their onion rings are the bomb. So that's my we're not getting paid by Hoo Ha or Ted's, but nope, that's our commercial for the
One day.
one day in Ted.
Yes. I am looking at it right now, and it looks very, like, old-fashioned, like the logo of it, and
It's been around for since the beginnings of Buffalo and different, the family and whatnot.
yeah.
I also sell Loganberry drink. It's actually that's from Canada, but it's a juice, like a Loganberry. I don't know how to purple. I don't know how to describe it. That's just very. It's actually from Canada, but seeing that we're 20 minutes from Canada, it's a good place to get your Loganberry too.
Okay,
Get your Loganberry, get your hot dog and some onion rings. You're all set.
I'm learning so much. It's funny when I look that up, the first thing the first, like, link that shows up is buffalo in a box. And it's just buffalo food that can get shipped to you, and the first thing is Aunt Rosie's Loganberry cans.
Yep.
I'm learning so much. I've never heard of Loganberry. This is crazy. Huh. Oh my gosh.
Like, ooh, hot, have what you bring Loganberry to boil it up.
Hot. Oh my god. Alright, let's get into our moment of the week.
Let's jump in.
Anything for you?
Well, last week we were talking a lot about awe, and I'm sure we'll continue on today. So I've been just having conversations with my wife about awe. And so she's been getting into it as well. But the other night, she was like, look at the sunset, look at the horizon, look at, and then, so we did. And then she got all excited. She goes, there's a rainbow. I got to get a picture of this awe. Right. So, I just thought that was kind of cute that, like this, what we see. Awe, I think some people saw it as a double rainbow. So anyways, I just wanted to shout out to my lovely wife, Aubrey, for embracing me and sort of seeking awe. So that was my moment here.
I appreciate that, and I'm almost certain that you and I probably saw the exact same rainbow. I if I like, 'cause that there was, like, a weird storm or, like, it was, like, and then the sun was speaking. Yeah, I was leaving Schnucks, and I was like, "Wow, look at that." Almost get hit by a car looking at a rainbow. Uh, my moment of the week is just, yeah, I kinda already touched on it, was, like, my last team meeting. It was just, feeling very grateful for my team, feeling grateful for, the people that I've been able to supervise, and just how important relationships are. I cultivating and building trust is something that's so hard to do. Um, this is my first ever, not my first ever, like, leadership role ever, but, like, my first, like, employment related, I feel like, as a therapist, leadership role. And it was just a really great experience to, I don't know, just build more awareness into, like, the decisions I make, the way that I communicate. And really, I found that as long as I am trying to build towards trust with my people, then that is kind of all that what feels like matters. And I feel very good in my heart that, like, I'm leaving with people that trust me and people that trusted me. And yeah, that's something that I really, really appreciate. So um anyway, we got a lot to get into. Today's episode, we're talking a lot about awe. We're getting we're diving deep into awe, why it matters, why it's important, what it even is. It's something that, I kind of mentioned to a couple people and they even had a hard time defining it. So, Dr. Keener, where do you want to start? Where do we jump off on?
Well, I mean, I guess to me there's two parts of the definition of awe. One is we experience this a vastness, the things that are bigger than ourselves. And then because of that experience, we have um it's a Piaget term of accommodation where we learn something because of it, that it adds to a mental model of something. So um awe can be good or bad, like awful, awesome. And it can also be, even though we talk about grand things, it can actually be like you could look at the structure or see a millipede and all their legs working in unison. Something that small could still be vast. So it's not like just always looking up at the stars or standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon. It could be, I was driving, I don't know if I used this example last week. Driving home the other day, I saw two young kids sitting outside playing, and it was just like just the innocence of youth and exploration and finding something new. I don't know how would that. I guess that's my maybe simple definition.
I have notes. I have to go get them. I have to go grab them. I put them on my table. Okay, I'm coming back. Okay, notes. So yeah, so in terms of like developing awe, a definition that I had read, from the study, one of the studies that you had sent me was, a perception of a stimulus that is too large for the self to comprehend. And I appreciate how you touch on that awe can be, a big thing, like conceptually large thing. It can also be a very small thing, like how gravity works. That's something that I mean, that I've sometimes thought about where, like, I'll sit in, like, a physics class, like, I'm studying physics classes all the time, like, uh, high school physics and just how all the rules that are to life, and I remember feeling a sense of awe in that, which was this just little equation, I mean, this little equation for gravity and how we center our entire lives around it. And so, you had me thinking about all these kinds of different versions of awe that I had experienced. Another one that I hear often or I've experienced often is whenever you're like stuck in traffic, and you're at a standstill and you're thinking about everything going on in your life, where you need to be, what you're going to do when you get home. And then you look to the person next to you that's also stuck in traffic and you kind of realize, they're probably having the exact same like thoughts, but they have a totally different life that they're trying to drive to. And they've probably got their own backstory, their own stuff, their own places to be. And then, you look at the car next to you and the car next to you and you realize, oh, wow, we're all, at a standstill experiencing what most, we're all kind of the same to an extent. So those are two examples of awe that I immediately think of, but I'm sure that there are others.
One thing I've been enjoying with this focus on awe is sort of reflecting back at moments that were awe-inspiring that I didn't know were awe-inspiring at the time. And I guess there was two moments sort of in the same sort of trip. I can remember going to Washington, D.C. for the first time ever, but I was an adult and going there for a conference and there was some free time. So I said, well, I'm going to go to the National Mall, right? And so I can remember walking out of the subway and just seeing the grandness of all the different monuments and the Capitol and the Washington Monument, etc. And I had realized, because I've only seen it in books or television, that you only get a certain glimpse. But when you're there, you can just see it like everywhere. And so then just I'm sort of a history guy growing up with that. And so that was okay, awe, inspiring. But what really hit me was when I went into the Smithsonian's National History Museum and I saw the flag, right? That was at Fort McHenry, right? At the War of 1812, that Francis Scott Key wrote the Star Spangled Banner, from, right? Watching it in the battle, right? And it's this huge flag, as you can imagine, just because it's flying, at on the forge. It's a dark room, sort of spotlights. I just got the tingles. I started to tear up. Like, just to me, that was like, oh my God. So when I was reading the book on Oz, like, oh my God, that's what that was. It was just this emotional connection to the Star Spangled Banner, the country, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. That reminds me of, yeah, and I love that because that now you're bringing up stories in my whenever I went to DC and I was much younger. I was in, like, high school, freshman year, and we went to the Holocaust Museum, and it was such a different level of awe, and I appreciate that we're talking about that. What's coming up for you?
I guess, connecting it to novelty, I found an article this week on, like, who knew there was a psychology of tourism, right? And people who have museums or tourist sites, they want to connect into novelty because it's new and novel, and that will gets people to come back, right? So it makes me think about how museums, whether it's a science museum, art museum, history museum, etc., sort of keep things new or to sort of hook us in this way. And then when you talked about the Holocaust Museum, my wife and I went to we're, we were the one in St. Louis before it was remodeled, and then we went to it again after remodel, and it opened up, and then we met with the docent before we were going in, and she said, "I hope your experience is meaningful." And that blew my mind too, because and maybe my ignorance is museums were sort of to be not that it wasn't enjoyable. Holocaust is, again, death and persecution. So it was just a different experience. So again, to me, that was just meaningful how she said that. I hope your experience is meaningful. I hope you have a meaningful experience. Anyway,
Well,
so
no, yeah, and that brings me a little bit to, like, the definitions, the I'm so glad you're bringing this up. Trying to remember, walking through the Holocaust Museum and feeling that level of awe, but how it's different, and they give different definitions in one of the studies that we had, chatted about, or that you had sent me. The difference between uh awe, wonder, and happiness. And, their idea is that, like, wonder is when you go and you see the stimulus, this grand stimulus, but then you feel like you have an understanding of it, or you feel like you have a good grasp on it. It's like, yeah, I get it. Like, I understand it. Like, I understand it fully. Like, it's crazy and wonderful, like, that I understand it. And I don't think that that's what, the goal is when you go through the Holocaust Museum, or go through pretty much most museums, which is that you go through and it's not meant for you to completely grasp everything and you have all the knowledge that you need and now you fully get, everything. Like, that's not the point. It's to elicit that awe, that level of, hey, this is grander than what you probably think it is. And this is how we're going to do that. And I'm so glad that we're talking about museums. I've thought about this too, of like how museum designers work. I would love if we could get like a museum, some museum staff on our podcast, just to talk about like the the lighting that goes into it, like how far apart you spread out different exhibits, so that you can take the time to absorb it until you get to the next one. Like, that has to be an art in itself, I'm sure. And then the last one being, happiness, which is that people think like awesome is like happy, but no, like happy is more of like, it's more of just an emotion, or like when you're connected to yourself, like it's egocentric. I'm happy about this. No, it goes more than happiness, more than understanding. It's something further than that.
well, I'd say let's do it, right? Let's contact the history museum.
Yeah.
Let's get somebody because my wife and I went to. They have an exhibit at the history museum called Collections, and it's a series of. The theme is St. Louis related. They're unrelated except they have something to do with St. Louis. Okay, so it's not like going on a baseball one or the World's Fair. Like, there was things from accessible playgrounds. There was things from the zoo. There was things from Lindbergh. There was things on looms to make blankets. But one of the first things in one of the exhibits was, what should we study next, or what should we create? I think we should. I went back to their website afterwards to see if I could put, because I said, "Oh, you should do a history of what is awe," and then I even thought about we should connect it to the other. There should be an exhibit at the art dealer about some of these amazing art pieces. We should take the science center or watch something on the giant movie, the going to the zoo and watching animals eat, or like, you could connect it to be interconnected. I mean,
Yes.
um,
Yes, I love this. I mean, going up the arch. I mean,
right, right, and you get being out, right, and just like think about what the explorer, Lewis and Clark thought when they didn't know what was in front of them. That was novel and awe inspiring. But as you said, again, I thought about, um, there is another thing called museum pedagogy, so similar to what we are, the novelty, where to me it's interesting. They have to sort of tell a story of an object in multiple different ways, because is everybody going to read everything about it? Cognitive load theory. I'm always mentally drained when I get out of the museum because I just read so much. It was so much to sort of comprehend, and how do they keep you connected? Kind of like you're saying, this should be the beginning, not the end of something, right? It should inspire more. So yeah, I think we should try to reach out to somebody. I tried to go, so that I'm gonna, maybe I shouldn't speak ill of the history museum, but their website is not very, like, it's hard to find somebody to email there. Like, I wanted to email again, like you're saying, it's not a learning designer, but a curator, if you will.
and I think something that I get stuck on, and we can maybe talk about this later, is one thing that it talks about is, you know, you perceive this stimulus, this giant stimulus, but then the second half of it is like an accommodation is the word they use for it, which is essentially like your brain gets hardwired in a different way, or some sort of stimulus. There's something different that's going on in your brain that either maybe changes the way that you think, changes the mode in which like you understand the world, and I think that that's what I think about a lot, and also how long it lasts. I think about that a lot, like, whenever I leave a museum or an awe-inspiring thing, and, like, how long those feelings, those tho that difference in thoughts, how long it lasts until I go back into my regular kind of egocentric, uh, view of the world, and maybe we'll get into that later, but, keep going. Any other thoughts that you have? And
Well, I guess that some of this is my maybe wrap up and or other parts, but I guess what I am similar to you, like, how long does that feeling last? I am trying to better, quote unquote, see it in my everyday life. Like, I am trying to better, and to me it's just as fun. It might not actually meet the entire definition of awe, but it's still producing a positive emotional experience, you know.
yeah,
So to me, that those are those things. Like, I'm seeing awe more, or seeing, oh, that could potentially be an awe moment.
yeah. And I think, one thing that I like about what I've been reading too is like why it's important, like why it's helpful, like why awe is a, positive experience to have, and that, awe is almost self-soothing, that it gets you out of, what is the term that they kept using? It was one that I kept reading all the time and I never use it. I gotta look at my notes. Default mode network. If I keep reading default mode network and I'm really bad at explaining what it is, I don't know if you've got a better definition than I do. Maybe sometime I'll figure out a better definition, or you can hop in. But the idea is that like experiencing awe takes you out of default mode network, takes you out of that egocentric me. How is this going through my own perception? And that it almost recalibrates your brain. It almost shakes you loose of what's going on in that egocentric brain of that the stress of your nervous system. And so why is that important? And it talks about, and we're kind of talking about too, is that that's a lot of what depression is. That depression is and a little bit of anxiety is a lot of a egocentric, me perception of how are things happening to me? How are people perceiving me? What is, it takes you outside of your own brain of what's going on, of maybe things that you've experienced, things that you currently are experiencing, and it almost shakes you loose of that. And I think that that's really cool, and that's something that I don't hear a lot of. Uh, so any thoughts on that? I just talked a lot there.
You know, so to me, that's the other one of the, I guess, outcomes. I'm going to call it a positive outcome that there's a little less. They call it about the small self, right? But then that we now become a smaller self because we have a much more outward focus. So as you said, so it's less egocentric, more okay. What's the bigger picture, bigger world? There's been some studies that talked about um, after you've done some um, interventions to increase awe that you have a more pro-social approach to the world. Even if before you sort of had an unconscious bias or an outward bias on something, you'd still be more likely to, donate $50 to this cause, right? That there was this outward focus. Um, and to me, this was interesting. Was sort of this virtues versus vices. Vices turn us inward, virtues turn us outward. So similar again to kind of how you're saying that, um, you know, depression can turn us inward, right? And so, um,
Well, that was something that I was worried about too, because you had mentioned, that theme or that term of the small self in our previous episode. And the first thing that made me that I was thinking about, I've had clients say, like in the opposite end of like, man, I feel small from like a very like not in an awe way, but in a more depressive way. But awe can almost do that in both ways, and I appreciate so we're talking about how awe, it doesn't have to be all positive. Like you can experience awe from like a natural disaster, something that is much larger than yourself, where you go, "Oh, I really am small. I am powerless in this." Uh, and even that, I feel like can lead to pro-social behaviors and pro-social attitudes. "Oh, I'm really small. I have no control over this. Oh, I need to find community," and things like that. So that's something that I'm noticing. And then I have on my notes, how do we experience awe more? And one thing, that I think a lot about is the availability of attention. Being the generation that I'm in, my brain obviously goes to phones. And what role do cell phones, does the modern day smartphone have in awe? Would you say the phone is a barrier, a portal to awe? Like, what do you think?
it's a tool, so it can be used as a barrier or as a support. So I know I'm riding the fence on that. If we are using social media as a way to sort of maybe be inward, well, then I would assume it was a barrier. I'm just thinking of um, a former wrestler just posted a picture of himself again standing on the edge of this mountain, looking so. Okay, yes, I'm on social media, but to me that was what a wonderful picture that is. Um, I've used, again, going back to AI, I've used Gemini to create me a realistic picture of awe of somebody sort of experiencing art and trying to get this emotional picture of this person standing in front of it. It does a pretty good job. So again, I think it can be, but it can't be. Uh, and then kind of going back, what made me think of this, and before I forget, another connection between awe and novelty is a precursor is our own openness. So to me, I guess, I don't know, talking about whatever generation, if we are open to newness or just this general openness to experience that lets us, I guess, experience awe and novelty easier, if you will.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because, we're talking about traits that can lead to awe more often. So, that the trait absorption is one that I was reading about, and then openness was, a big one, which was, kind of it goes hand in hand with that curiosity. And I'm on the more cynical side where my openness, I feel like, is diminished by my phone, where I don't have to be open because I can get the closest facsimile of it to with my phone. If I want to be on the grand, if I want to experience this grand notion, I could just probably watch a YouTube video about it. If I like instead of going skydiving, I could have probably watched a GoPro video and get closer to that. So I do think about how, accessibility to experiences or, pseudo experiences has kind of limited my generation's ability to be open to other experiences where it's just like, well, I could do that, or I could just, I find a lot of my awe in relationships where maybe I'll have a big get together, or maybe there will be like a surprise birthday party for somebody. And those moments where I step back into the corner of the room and I look around and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And I can't get that on a phone in a group chat, and I can't get that with these other modes of communication. So that's where my brain is at whenever it comes to kind of technology, and then I think of people who are awe prone. Like I think of people in my life, and you might have people in your brain that you feel like are prone to awe just automatically. I think I have ideas of people who are like that, but I want to get your thoughts. Like, are there people in your life who you're like, oh yeah, this person like it can easily access awe like that?
I don't know. I haven't thought of that. I guess I would think more of our other characteristics were, positivity, extroversion, woo kind of thing that there might be that they might again also then be also more better able to see or experience it because of those characteristics. It would be interesting to ask. I also think of sometimes people that who I really enjoy talking with because of again, not only just a social connection, but of what we are talking about. Like that
Yeah.
could still be, I guess, whether it's ever awesome totally or not, but approaching awe. So that's a good question. I would say I get energized at the end of every mentor moments. And that's not because it's at the end, it's because we just,
And I had
time together, right?
I'd agree, and I appreciate that we're talking about, how, and we touched on it a little bit last episode, that awe can be something that is shared, right? That it doesn't have to be that I don't have to experience it myself, that somebody else can come to me and point me into the direction of awe, kind of like what you had described with your wife going, "Hey, look at that." That having people in our lives that push us and get us to highlight those things and kind of turn our eyes to those things. I think that's so special, and I it makes me think of, I want to be grateful for those individuals. And that leads me to another thing I'm taking notes about. And, something that I've been reading a lot about and thinking a lot about is just the male experience, young men. Uh, and I feel very strongly, well, I'd like to pause, give the hypothesis, I suppose, that developing awe and recognizing awe is becoming harder and harder for young men. And I'm going to stop there, and I can expand on that, but I want to get your thoughts on if you might agree, disagree, or do you want me to expand on it?
I would say I haven't thought this is awesome. This is awesome. This is it. Very interesting how we're both sort of, right, thinking about the same topic and thinking about it in different ways or ways that are meaningful. Maybe this is some intellectual fluence that we're getting because we're really doing some purposeful reflection and things that are meaningful to us. Tell me more.
So something that I've been talking to, I have been working with teenagers quite a lot, and the vernacular uh, that is typically used nowadays is nonchalant versus chalant, and I wish I could write a or I'm gonna go write a newsletter about to be chalant or not, and it's this idea that to be especially a guy is to what's seen as, how do I explain this? Stereotypically masculine would be to not be very chalant, to be very nonchalant, to be very smooth and cool. I mean, you're probably thinking of the Fawns. I don't know what that version. Yes, yeah, I'm in your head. I know exactly. No, I don't know what my version of it would be, but like that effortless, cool, not getting wowed by stuff, very even keel. And that is, I mean, gosh, we see that in film, we see that in movies of like, the the male that does not get stopped and look at it something, go, whoa. It's the guy that is, very stern and doesn't show that level of awe. And so, to be nonchalant as a male has been, I believe, over the course of our I don't know how long, 20th, first century is, a good thing to be a guy. I think that the pendulum is starting to shift a little bit I think that at least that's something that I've been trying to do as a therapist is with my young guys is like, you can be excited about this. Like you're allowed to look at something and experience something and go, whoa, this is huge, as opposed to, yeah, I've got this taken care of, or, this is something that, I know exactly what I'm looking at and stuff like that. And then I also think about sharing awe, because awe can be a feeling inside, but I find a lot of my awe to be experienced whenever I'm able to share it with somebody and say, "Hey, look at this. Can you believe this?" And then it feels more awe to me now that I finally shared it with somebody. If a guy comes up to me and says, let's say that me and my buddies are all looking at like some, really pretty scenic landscape, and somebody, one of the guys starts to tear up a little bit, is just like really moved by it. That guy's going to get made fun of. That guy is going to get absolutely roasted for having an emotional reaction to that level of awe. And that's just where my brain comes. And then especially, the idea, I keep going. Cringe is another thing of like, oh my gosh, you're telling me this awe, feeling that you've got, okay, that's a little cringe. I need you to like calm it down a little bit. Uh, because I think that we've been raised, or at least I've been raised, that if somebody is having a very emotional, no, I shouldn't say emotional, but if somebody is having a very awe reaction to something, then it's most likely not genuine. That is the way that I've been kind of raised to believe, is that typically if somebody is doing that, then it's not really authentic. But maybe they're trying to elicit a response out of you, maybe that maybe their reaction isn't true. And that awe is, I don't know, maybe they're just doing it to be performative almost. And so I just see all these barriers that I've experienced, at least in my life as a young male, and I'm seeing in other young men of don't experience awe. And if you do, don't share it with anybody. Uh, what are your thoughts on everything that I just shared? Is any of this resonating with you?
Well, I guess my last thought, or the one that's fresh in my mind, is going back to teaching counseling, and when we're like in an internship class or doing some kind of process, and we say, well, what about that experience? What is it like? How is that impacting to you? What does that say about you? Right. So I guess I hear you just doing your own self exploration and self discovery. I guess when you started, it made me think of again that paradigm that men aren't supposed to show emotion, right? And so again, as you're saying, if it's well, yeah, or I knew that, or that's yeah, I've seen better, or something like that.
Right.
You have to play it cool. I don't know. I don't know if I'm getting aged out of some of those things. Meaning, I don't know. Like maybe it's something about being part of a group. When I'm hanging out with the wrestlers, it's not uncommon for those guys to say they love each other. And thinking about what you just said too, when I was wrestling, if I would have said it to my teammate, I loved him, we would have been, ostracized, right? But in here, like, we are college athletes, and they're like, I don't know. So I don't know. Again, maybe it's
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and that is something that I think is important, that like that pendulum is beginning to swing. That I think is really really cool. And plus, I'm a therapist, so I spend some time with other guys that are therapists, and they're able to kind of tap into that a little bit more. But that is just something that I've recognized, at least in myself growing up, that to experience awe is almost like, okay, chill out, you move on. Okay, we've all seen the sunset before. Act like you've seen a rainbow before. I
well, there is a little bit there. There's a famous quote, again, a Buffalo thing. When Thurman Thomas scored one of his first touchdowns, he made a big like celebration dance. And Marv Levy, the coach at the time, when Thurman Thomas came to the sideline, um, Marv Levy said, act like you've been there before. Right. So don't
yeah.
like, You should be scoring touchdowns all the time. You're that good of it, So yeah, I think there again, society has those whatever those norms, what we think is appropriate. How do we act, not act? And I guess these things are sort of well. Actually, I was using a large language model to sort of help me better understand, and I kind of talked about like an existential moment. Like if we have this existential moment, that could very well be awe, right? We again, that's the accommodation thing that we are now seeing something differently. So again, experiencing death or being faced with that, I don't know. I just
Yeah, and I'm glad that you bring it up because that's part of my notes, which is, I this is the cynicism in me, and I sometimes just look at the barriers to awe and like what in culture today and society today is keeping young people, or at least people my age, from experiencing awe. And I do think that what used to be a good gateway for people into those feelings of awe is spirituality and typically religion, and having been religious myself, growing up and going through, I think, phases of that. I've experienced that, right? You're in a church and you're experiencing worship and you feel that like sense of awe. And we know that, statistically young people are going to church less and less and less. So, having those, I want to say maybe spiritual moments in which you are, with a larger community experiencing something close to an existential thing of like, at the afterlife, where do I go? And experiential with maybe a higher power, that those are becoming less and less for people to experience. Um, and so those places are tough for people to have, and I feel like that was a location and a portal for a lot of people growing up to have those feelings of awe, and we're not getting it anymore. And so, I think the closest thing that people are starting to get to that is like, modern day spirituality. I mean, maybe not modern day, I shouldn't say that, but like I see a lot more now with like meditation. Uh, but even that is very, inward thinking. Um, but yeah, that's where my brain goes, is that, religious and spirituality, I feel like is such a great gateway to that, but it's just been limited with the way that I think culture is moving.
my pastor mentioned the awe book, and that's where I sort of oh, that sounds pretty interesting. So
I love that.
it's funny we yeah.
That's funny. Yeah. And so I just think about that, and that, um, and then the last thing in my list, which I like, and it makes me feel better about myself, which is that sometimes things that create awe in other people don't create awe in me. And I feel like there's something wrong with me. Like there's something broken. Like, okay, like is my awe muscle just not like right? Like I'm not working it out. Like everyone else is like crying at this something. I don't know. And why am I not having such an awe response the way that everyone else is having? And I appreciate something that I was reading, which was that, awe should be catered towards personal preference, and that it's okay for me to have my own preference of what awe is. And so I think a lot about there's, I had met a professor at Missouri Baptist who just does like outdoor therapy, like wilderness therapy, and you might know who I'm talking about. I don't know, but we were talking about it, and I just had this like idea. And this was years ago that we were talking about it, and I had this like idea in my brain, this like picture of my brain where you bring all these kids up a mountain and you're like showing them the mountain. Look, does this not present awe to you? Does that change your lives? And for that to be okay, for it not to, that it might only create a sense of awe in maybe one out of your six people that you bring up that mountain, and that's okay. And like me as a therapist, if I'm trying to elicit awe in a client, that it is a very person centered approach. That it is not like, hey, these things make me feel awe. Let's go to a museum, and I'm gonna run through the same museum as you, and I'm gonna try to create awe that is such a personal experience for everybody. So, um, yeah, I mean, maybe it's not my mentor moment yet, but that would be something that I think about is like almost homework, like finding stuff for you that is awe worthy, that you've experienced awe, and that it doesn't have to be the same as mine. Okay, I'm done talking. Woof. That was a lot. Is any of this resonating?
Well, it is because Again, I know you're the yeah, in the last our last episode, you incorporated novelty into this, and to me, that's can be the same, but not, right? Novelty is just new, doesn't mean it's awe-inspiring, but just sort of I found an article that talked about novelty as a psychological, need, like almost like being saying, "No, we need to experience newness," right? And it can even be it's like although we go to the park all the time, but it's a new experience at the park, right? So again, kind of like awe can be grand or small things, but and so again, just it's been fun learning two things sort of at once because it forces us to sort of compare and contrast a little bit. So hopefully that from a learning perspective, that's called interleaving, right? That we're it's forcing us to compare and contrast. Hopefully, they get a deeper understanding. So to me, that's what's sort of what I'm resonating now is this. And to me, it all goes with for me, it's learning. That's sort of my research as well. So yeah, how does awe, novelty, wonder, curiosity inspire us to again go deeper into something to become a better human being?
Yeah. And then my last cynical point, I guess, is like the other side of the coin, which is, you say that almost like novelty is like a human need, and you could probably overdose on novelty. Like, how much novelty is too much? Like if I have access to novelty at any given point, does nothing become novel then?
Well, and maybe this is slightly different. There, from a learning theory, there is a novelty effect that the novelty, the newness gets you to hook, but eventually whatever you're learning needs to be intrinsic to you or extrinsic if you're being graded on it for you to continue. So think of technology, like if we're integrating generative AI into the classroom, we have to move beyond, oh, great, yeah, I used it to do this, right? It has to be meaningful. So,
Right.
but again, I would also agree with you saying if newness is everywhere, then what's new, right? If it's all new, what nothing is new. So,
Yeah. I mean, just my phone is like just a neural jack into new experience, new experience, new experience, new experience, new thing, new thing, new thing, new video, just like at the like, I mean, I will never run out of novelty. Uh, so like you can almost get burnt out on it.
well, not to say, but it makes me think of this. Aubrey and I went to get some ice cream. It was some of the best clementines. I know you know clementines. We went to the one in Lafayette Square versus Kirkwood. But anyways, like got 2 scoops, which were way too much more than I needed, but it's at the time, I needed 2 scoops. It was the cone, so I'm licking my ice cream. I don't know, after 3 or 4 minutes, my tongue was so numb, I couldn't taste it anymore, right? So, it was kinda to me, that's what made me think of that, like, I couldn't enjoy the besides just knowing it was ice cream and I thought it was good, it was like, "Hmm, maybe next time I just 1 scoop is fine," just because it's right? Being oversaturated with the novelty or the flavor or the temperature.
Yeah.
I don't
It new for the sake of new is not good. Is not like it can't you yeah, I appreciate how you mentioned that you can't just be all in on something just because it's new. You have to have an intrinsic relationship with something, or extrinsic. So
yeah, maybe that's going back to what you were saying before about perspective, right? That it's up to us to make, okay, what is fun about this or new and interesting versus, okay, yeah, great. That's a new show, but yeah.
yeah, I mean, like movies, that's a big thing for me. Is like I'm getting burnt out on a movie. Like, okay, it's new, all right, but nothing's like grabbing my anyway. I'm gonna go see Superman. That'll all change. Don't worry. I'm excited. Okay, I feel like we're at a good point for some counselor corner. Do you have anything for your counselor's corner?
Yeah, I guess to keep it quick and simple, um, I mentioned it a little bit already. Me, the first step of learning something is then trying to see it, right? So again, from an awe perspective, okay, okay, that could be or is not. I'm also writing an ethics course, so it made me think about the developmental path of how do you know you're becoming better like with moral reasoning, ethical reasoning. And so to me, the first step was reading about awe and then really developing this course. And then hopefully, right, as a student or a learner, that allows us to sort of see it in the world. So that's sort of abstract. So I guess whatever you're interested in right now, search it out. Like, see if you can see it in the real world in different variations, or, oh, I never, oh, gosh, I knew that, but I never realized, made that connection before. So, I know, try to see things in your world, right? Try to see awe or novelty or,
Yeah. All this doesn't matter if we're not putting it into practice. Right. That's
there you go. Hey, if we don't learn and don't take it out of the classroom, we haven't,
my counselor's corner. Yeah, my counselor's corner, but pretty simple. These last 2 weeks have been discharge sessions, saying goodbye to clients, and of course, we've got them set up with, other therapists and other supports and ways, that they're able to still, feel supported. And discharges suck. I hate them. I've never been. What I would say is I've never thought that I've been good at discharge sessions. Mostly, I don't know why. Maybe that's something I've got to explore in myself. But if I were to give any tip to any therapist that is doing any kind of like discharging or like any saying any kind of goodbyes, is to really lean into the discomfort. Don't pretend like it's easy. And I found that if I share that I'm sad, that it's that's one thing I'm trying to be super open about with my clients, or have been, is like, hey, this is sad. I feel sad right now, and that's okay. Let's be sad together. That's just, it's just helpful that you don't have to be this super professional, like you got it under control, like you were prepared for this. You're the adult in the room. No, you're a human being and you have a relationship with this person. It's okay to be sad. That makes probably a more healthier discharge to connect on that front. So that's my piece.
yeah, it makes me think, going back to how you started with being your last day, and it, I didn't know if it was empathetic, so I didn't say at the time, but things end and begin, right? That's a natural part of life, just like as you're saying here, emotions are a natural part of life. So as you said, it's
Yeah.
okay to feel sad when something is ending.
And I do this thing that I notice other people do too, is like I'll use weird as a placeholder for an uncomfortable emotion. That's something that I've noticed I'll do, or my clients will do often. It's like, yeah, it's just been weird. And now I'm trying to, like, just like I'm trying to challenge my clients to do, I'm trying to challenge myself to, like, no, it's not weird. There's an actual word for that you're feeling. Use the actual word instead of a placeholder. So that's just something that I've noticed. Okay.
Better tip. They got like lots of counselor tips right there.
I know. I gotta. My brain is full of knowledge. Uh, any book, podcast, tool recommendation, any resource review? It might just be the book Awe. I don't think that we've.
Yeah, I thought we mentioned that last week, right? But
Yeah, I think I
my
did.
shelf. But well, actually, my resource was more of, it's sort of step two. After you started trying to see awe, go to Gemini or ChatGPT or your favorite large language model and do a modified journal about it. Sort of have a
Yeah,
conversation with the agent about it, just to see what happens.
I was just about to say that. I was like, do some form of documentation. Like, it's one thing to notice; it's another thing to, be a documenter of it. I think that you take a control piece to it, which is nice. Thank you for listening to Mentor Moments. If you liked what you heard, give us a follow. And join us again in 2 weeks for another conversation about counseling, education, tech, and career development.